Wait, that's not how you arrest people. On the ground.
This was the moment Border Patrol and Florida Highway Patrol officers detained a U.S. citizen while conducting immigration enforcement.
I got rights to talk, bro.
You got no rights here.
I do.
Illegal, brother. Get up. I was born and raised over here.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. You've got no rights here. That's where we are as a country if you happen to look like, in the words of this officer, an amigo. Never mind the fact that even non-citizens, even undocumented immigrants have rights in this country. If you look a certain way, your presumption of rights is forfeit. The most generous explanation here is that the law enforcement officers made a mistake, that they assumed this young man was in the country illegally. But come on, it is so much worse than that. A culture of brutality mixed with de facto impunity has permeated immigration enforcement in this country. As far as we can tell, there has been no accountability for the officers who treated Kenny Laynez-Ambrosio this way, and no apology or explanation for the assertion that he had no rights. And in a statement released by the Department of Homeland Security, the only reference to accountability was the announcement that the victim, the American citizen who was wrongfully detained, would not be prosecuted. We've been covering the recruitment efforts by the Department of Homeland Security here, $50,000 signing bonuses coupled with an inevitable lowering of standards. Combine that with this culture of brutality and impunity, and I promise you, we will be seeing much more of this. And remember, the only reason we even know about this incident is that the young man at the center of it had the presence of mind to go live on his TikTok feed as the assault was unfolding. How many more incidents are happening without anyone seeing them? I spoke with Kaivan Shroff about all this. You'll know him from our past conversations about how young people across the country are processing what is happening. He has some great insights into how this kind of overreach by Trump's immigration enforcers will backfire. Here's me and Kaivan. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. My guest today is Kaivan Shroff, a Gen Z political consultant, former 2024 DNC delegate, and a prolific commentator across social media and on Substack. Kaivan, I was drawn to your last Substack post in which you're highlighting this story about a young Gen Z American citizen, I think dragged out of his car. We have the live video, and as I understand it, this was not a setup. He wasn't intending to expose the brutality of the agents who grabbed him. He was just showing his mom how to use TikTok, right? And he pressed live as soon as he realized what was happening. And that's the only reason there's any accountability at all for this story.
Absolutely. You know, I think one of the shames, and I appreciate Substack and YouTube and what you do, is that this wasn't really covered by mainstream media. You know, this happened back in May, and it really only circulated recently, and I was able to share it and it got some traction, but it's so much worse than, you know, even how you laid it out, right? These cops in that video are laughing about this situation. They tell an 18-year-old American citizen, you have no rights. They laugh about some bonus, a $30,000 bonus they're supposedly going to get for engaging in this behavior. By the way, the American people absolutely deserve to know what they were talking about in that clip, what has been offered to these folks to racially profile and terrorize U.S. citizens. And then at the end of that clip, you hear them say, we're going to end up shooting some of these people, as if that's totally normal, that they will kill people, by the way, who they've wrongfully detained in this situation. So an absolute horror show. And to your point as well, had he not been recording, how much worse would their behavior have been? And then as a quick follow-up, since I posted that, they actually wanted to charge that young man with obstruction. Now, they won't pursue the charges, but it's really an intimidation threat, right? To try to charge somebody for holding you accountable for your awful and unlawful behavior.
It begs the question, how many of these stories are we not getting? How many instances are there of an American citizen, or look, it doesn't even have to be an American citizen, a human being brutalized, who doesn't have the presence of mind in that moment to press record on their TikTok live feed, right? This surely is just the tip of the iceberg in the brutality with which ICE is treating its victims. We're not hearing about thousands of these stories.
Absolutely. And obviously we don't understand what led up to this stop, but I think it's pretty fair to assume that it was likely profiling about the race of these individuals, that they were on their way to a certain type of job, which courts have consistently ruled is unlawful and outside of the authority of both ICE and Border Patrol. And I think we saw a similar example of this, right, during those George Floyd protests where, we wondered for the first time, some of these moments were shown on camera, and we saw how law enforcement was feeling so emboldened to actually even kill somebody over stealing a pack of cigarettes. And I think, how many more examples? You have to assume there are hundreds more examples of this. And by the way, something that hasn't been focused on, in Donald Trump's first term, he deported 70 U.S. citizens. You can look it up on the Government's Accountability Office website. It's a shame that there's been such little oversight here. And I think, usually the media plays some type of role. Mainstream media plays a role in holding administrations accountable. They certainly tried to hold Joe Biden accountable for every single thing that he ever did. And meanwhile, they seem afraid almost to cover these stories, to let people know what's happening here, what this administration is doing. And that's incredibly chilling and scary.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say thank you to everyone who's been following and supporting this show and this channel. None of it happens without you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my Substack page, I'd really appreciate the follow. It's a great way to make sure you never miss an episode. It's free to sign up. And if you're able to pitch in a few bucks, every dollar goes back into the show. Just search for The Ken Harbaugh Show on Substack or click the link below. Thanks. I think we can be sure that it's going to get far worse before it gets better. It's going to be up to citizen journalists, citizens, period, to document what ICE is doing, because I don't think that the legacy media is going to be able to cover this, partly because it just isn't predisposed to do it, but also because it's a matter of scale. Like, this story is going to be happening in communities across the country, thousands of communities. Of course, the administration is focusing on areas where they can be the most provocative, LA, but they're coming to your neighborhood too. And I can guarantee you that the same corporations that fired Stephen Colbert are not going to lean into this story if there's a risk that it overly offends Donald Trump and the FCC. So it's going to be up to us.
You're so right. And I mean, it's already come here in my city, New York City, where they arrested Brad Lander, if you remember, in that exchange for really no reason. An official, the New York City comptroller, for standing up for the lawful rights of somebody they were trying to detain in a New York State courthouse against the courthouse's policy. So absolutely rogue masked actors here, empowered by the Trump administration to really feel they can do anything and that they're untouchable.
The behavior of these agents, for me, is another window into what's likely coming, because their recruiting is in overdrive now. And when you look at the history of law enforcement recruiting, and I think CBP is probably the best analogy, they, a few years ago, tried to hire a few thousand qualified new Border Patrol agents, and it was really difficult. If ICE has to hire tens of thousands, who do you think they're going to get? Who is going to be, first of all, drawn to that kind of work? And how much lower are they going to have to make the standards to meet those quotas? I am terrified of what the next generation of ICE agents is going to look like.
Well, and who wants to join in on this? Who's watching this and says, I want to be that masked guy abusing my fellow American citizens? So it's a very scary thought. And I think, something that we'll try to undo when we win back power, but it will be a slog.
Kaivan, last question. How are people of your generation talking about this broad assault on civil liberties? Is it resonating at a generational level, or is this still just an immigration issue?
Yeah, last time we chatted, I know we were catching up before this, I was talking to you about how 12th grade boys were trending more conservative before the election. And obviously, in hindsight, it looks like that was a really accurate sort of assessment. But I'll tell you, new polling shows that younger voters have by double digits turned on Donald Trump since January when he was inaugurated for the second time as the oldest president ever inaugurated. And that's because he campaigned on so many lies, and people don't want, their families, their communities torn apart in this way. By the way, even economically, I think some conservatives are starting to see the error of this approach. And of course, they're learning so late and with so many people harmed already that it's deeply troubling. But absolutely, Donald Trump is losing on this issue with even some of the Hispanic voters that he did gain. He's lost those voters. He's lost young voters. So I'm hoping that we have a huge turnout in 2026. I know everyone across the spectrum on the left is focused on that, and, finally some chance to turn this stuff around.
Well, Kaivan, thanks for joining us. We'll check back in again with you soon. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
New Meidas merch drop. Check out the latest pro-democracy sticker packs, t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and more. All at store.MeidasTouch.com.